Welcome to part 7 of Caliburn.Micro Introduction series. Today we will talk about items control. So if you have a list of some items and the size of the list is not predefined, you can use items control to present all of the items at once. First, let's start with some basics and then we will go into more advanced scenarios. So we create items control in our view. It has a property called items source, and we will bind this items source property to a collection property in our view model. Let's name this property some collection. Now we need to create that property in our view model, so it will be a list of strings, and let's set some values. Let's run the application and see what we got. Alright, now we see that items control display the 3 values in the collection. Since the values are strings, the items control knows how to display them. However, if we had a more complex type like a class that has multiple properties, let's say we would have a collection of books, then we will need to define how items are displayed. Let's do that. Let's create a collection of books. I will use IntelliSense to automatically generate books class. It will have a property name, author, and page count. Let's create some sample books. Let's update the property name in item source binding, and let's run the application and see how it looks. As you see, each book is not displayed because the control doesn't know how to display a book class. So what we will need to do is define the items control item template. So this is the template for each of the items in collection. Let's wrap it in border, and then we will have a stack panel with orientation horizontal, and then we will have 3 text fields for each of the properties. we can define the data type for data template. Then the IntelliSense will give us property suggestions, property name suggestions when we are binding. Alright, let's run the application again, and now the control will know how to display a book. Doesn't look very good, but we can see both books. We can make some adjustments to make it look better. Let's add some margin. We will also give the background for border, so we will clearly see where each of the item start and end. Here we go. There is one more important part of items control. It is the items panel. It is basically a panel that wraps all the items inside of it. So we can have a stack panel. The default one, I think, is stack panel orientation vertical. We can have it horizontal, looks like this. We can have it wrap panel. It will be more responsive and will adjust the size. So that pretty much covers the basics. Now let's get into more advanced stuff. Well, maybe first, since we are using Caliburn.Micro, we can bind the item's source by name. Let's do that. Let's start the application, and we make sure that it works exactly the same. Alright, since we have covered the basics, I will continue on this example and show you how it would look in the real world example. First thing, we should not use models here. We should use view models to display books, since we are using MVVM pattern. So let's create book view model. We will pass an instance of book to it, to constructor. We will define all the properties that we want displayed in the view. In this case, it will have the same properties as book. However, in real situation, book might have a lot more, but not all of them would be displayed. We will also use Bindable Collection instead of list. When adding items to Bindable Collection, it will automatically notify the view that items were added and it will refresh. We didn't need that before with list because it was initialized with values and not added during runtime. We will also move the books retrieval logic to books repository. So it will have a method get and it will return a list of books Of course, it is a lot simplified version of what would be in reality. The books would probably be queried from database or from some API. However, we will have a private field of books. Let's copy the previously created books. Right. So we don't need to rewrite. So we injected this books repository into shell view model. Now, since we are using Caliburn.Micro and this shell view model is a screen, we will override onActivate method, and here we will call the books repository to get the books. Now we need to fill this books collection. However, we need to create a book view model from each of the books. So we'll add range to this books collection, and then we will iterate all books. And create a book view model. Passing the book to its constructor. Now, since we are using book view model, we can move this data template into a separate view. That will be book view. And we will just paste what we had in the item template. Here is a little trick. For text block you can specify fallback value, and it will be displayed while designing your control. It will serve as a placeholder. Since the property names in our book and book view model are the same, we didn't need to update the bindings of text blocks, so they are the same. Let's run the application and see how it looks. Alright, we forgot to register the books repository into our container. Since we are injecting it into shell view model, let's run it again. Looks exactly as before, however the code is much cleaner. The book view and view model are separated. Let's implement one more common use case. We will implement a book remove button. So each book will have a button remove, and when it is clicked it will be removed from the list. So for that we will need a button. We will add it directly to book view. We give it name remove. So in view model we will need a method named the same, remove, and it will be invoked when the button is clicked. Now there is one problem. The books list is in another view model. So how do we actually remove the book from this books list in the book view? For that we will use events. So when the remove button is clicked, we will invoke the book removed event. And here in shell view model, when creating book view models, we will subscribe to that event and register a handler for that. We will move this view model creation to another method, so that code is clearer. Here we are subscribing to the book removed event. And when we receive that book removed is invoked, we will execute onBookRemoved method. And here we will remove the book view model from books collection. Here the sender is the book view model that invoked this event, so we can cast it without any worries and just remove it from the books collection. Alright, looks good. Let's run and see how it works. Just as expected. Great. Of course, we would actually want to remove the book from the books repository, so we would have a method called remove. We would pass in a book and it would look something like this. And when removing the book view model, we will also call this books repository remove, and when it is removed, we will invoke the event book removed. Alright, we also need to pass the books repository to the constructor here. One more important thing is that when subscribing to an event, we need to unsubscribe, otherwise we will have leaks. So we will unsubscribe when removing book. We will also override the deactivate method, and here we will clear the books collection, and here we also need to unsubscribe from the book removed event. Looks good. And let's do one last check if everything works. Great. So after filming it, I thought that maybe it will be not clear why I used event and not event aggregator for the book removal. The main reason is that I believe event aggregator should be used more globally when the view models that are communicating are not directly related. And in this case, we are creating book view models directly in the view model that needs to handle the remove event. That's why I think it's better to just use C# event and not fill up with global level messages that event aggregator exchanges. Thank you for watching. I hope it was helpful, and if you have any questions, please ask in comments.